guys, welcome back. It is your favorite Gimp with a Limp, and we're going to jump back into where we left off with Onus, Traianus. I'm just going to start calling it Onus because I'm really sure I'm not saying that second one correctly. Now, in the previous video, I had talked about how I was ad hocing it a little bit for playing it solo, playing it heads up. And I'm going to change how I was doing that because I do think I was making a mistake in streamlining it just a bit too much. And I don't want to take out all the nuance because I can see why they made some of the choices that they did now. On second thought, on more reflection, I can see why they made some of the choices they made, especially back here when it's talking about the different types of activations, right? And the choices the AI is going to make. And I want to have a little bit more of that random factor in there. And getting these cards back into it is a good way to go with that. So I am sticking with streamlining like I originally wanted to, but here's how I'm going to do it instead. We're going to kind of let the card gods make some of these choices. So these cards, let me grab one off the bottom so I can show you what I'm talking about. Yeah. Remember, they have to do with activations, right? And actually this one doesn't. This has something else, and that's actually a key part of the problem. What I was trying to figure out on how to work this around. The ones that have the little symbol that has footprints here, that means it's an order card. Okay, that means that you activate units. Is this one? This one's not. This one's not. Okay, here we go. So this is an activation. You can activate as many units as your general's leadership value. If you don't have a general or if they are fleeing, activate 3 units. So in these stacks of cards, there's a large variety of randomness, right? Activate ranged units, activate cavalry, activate 2, activate 1, activate 3, whatever it is. And it brings a fair amount of that random factor in there that I wanted to get in there because just going back and forth doing one unit I think is going to be a little bit boring. So we're going to bring this random factor back into it. How we're going to do that is for the AI, I'm simply going to draw until I get an order card. And that's what they're going to activate. Whether it's 1 unit, whether it's 10 units, whether it's whatever they have to activate. Now, it's going to be whatever that first activation card is. And if it happens to be something that doesn't apply to them, like let's say it's activating in catapult and they don't have a catapult, we'll just, say, oh, well, they lost that one. But I am doing the same thing to myself. I am drawing cards as well for my troops over here on the right. So when I activate, I'm going to be determined based off the card gods as well. It'll bring a little, like I said, a little randomness into the game and change things up a little bit. I won't be able to know exactly what the AI is going to activate because that's going to have just a random card draw on it. And honestly, what I'm doing isn't too far off from what the solo rules say for it. Like they're saying draw 3, the AI never has a hand of cards, draw 3 cards, pick 2, and all this. Theirs was a little more complex than I wanted to go with, and I still had to worry about my own hand of cards. And when I'm playing things solitaire, I like to streamline that aspect of it as much as possible to prevent myself from making goofs. And I think this just a card, boom, boom, just that's it, is going to be easier to keep track of, but be more complex than a simple 1-to-1 and give us that random factor that we want for a solitaire game. I think I'm going to go ahead and remove as well the not activating the previous units because no need for that now that we have random factor for the cards. So anything can get activated. All right, so the Macedonians were the last ones to go. It's up to Rome now. All right, Rome, what are you drawing over here? First card is an order card. So let's bring it up. You can activate all mounted units, elephants, cavalry, and chariots. Very nice. Very, 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 very nice. I like that card. That is good. All right, well, I do have elephants here. And like I said, I'm going to pick them up to show them on camera, so I'm not worried about exact placement. But love these guys. Look at this. And I think they have javelins. Yes, they have javelins. Some other special abilities. I'm going to have to look those up. But some really good stats. 5-5 on melee, 3-3 on range. And when you're looking at these stats like melee, this is hit and like damage. But when it comes to range, the hit and damage is the same. So it's going to be that first number. Whereas melee, it can be different. Ranged, it's always going to be the same. That second parentheses number is their range. Defense 7-8. That's like their hit and then damage. So like hit and armor. When you think about it, the numbers that you need to get through. So the higher, the better. Morale, pretty high. 8 hit points, pretty high. And 4. That's relatively slow for cavalry because cavalry is 6 generally. But these things are elephants. They're not going to be as fast, but they're going to crush some stuff. Okay, so those elephants are brutal. Those things have lunge. So +1 against infantry. Fear, -1 against enemy morale, and they're professionals, so they get to re-roll ones. Ones is like a critical failure in this game. If you roll a 1, it's an automatic loss. So they got that, and then I think they got, what was it? Javelins, yeah. So they got javelins with just a little bit more range on them as well. So they are awesome. The cavalry has lunge, and they can go into those special formations as well. All right, so we're going to jump into it. We're going to activate those mounted units. I've got 2 sets of these Equites, whatever they're called. So they get some bonuses, but one of the things they can do is they can do an arrow formation, and they can do that and stay in regular movement. Now, I think I can put them in this. It says they lose this after the charge, but I think they can stay in it before the charge. Yeah, it says it can be activated during regular movement, but it's lost. The bonus is lost after the charge. So essentially they go into this like arrowhead and they'll charge in against the enemy and they get a bonus. Plus they get a bonus against infantry if I can get them against some infantry. There's none over there. But this way, at least they would have some bonus. So I'm going to go ahead and put them in this, but they are not using it actually yet. They haven't charged, but in this formation, they can do a regular movement, which for them is going to be 6. So we're going to move them up. I know I got them in the bottom. My apologies. We are way down here at the bottom of the map. So move them up. That's 3 and another 6. You can see how cavalry is pretty quick. Let's move up to our elephants. With our elephants, they just have a movement of 4. So we're going to push them up. That's that. And just another 1. Boom. All right. There we go. They're charging in. And I got 1 more at the top I'll go ahead and get taken care of. All right. I think this might end up hurting me, but we'll see. I'm trying to pivot around with my very top cavalry unit instead of them going straight across and just engaging the enemy cavalry, trying to bring them south of this forest and pivot around and go in towards the enemy in that direction. But the line is right there behind them, and the line is not, it's slower than them, but they're definitely fast enough to get up there, so it'll hold this line back a little bit. So I'm hoping these guys can get in there, do some damage, but that'll give my line time to move up and engage everything. All right, so our eye in the sky is showing us the current state. So Roman lines are over here. They're pushing up. They got that hill right there in the center, kind of splitting up the terrain. Hill, forest, splitting it up, making the troops have to move around. Now, they can move through the forest, but that's harder terrain. It slows them down, and there are some defensive modifiers that get in there. I don't think elephants can move through there. Oh, as an FYI, though, I would definitely recommend getting this expansion if you get the game. Even if you get the game and you just get 1 box. So like Onus Pack 2 or just the Onus original game, either one is able to stand on its own. If you have to pick the one of the boxes and the expansion, this one, versus both of the bigger boxes. Yeah, you get a lot more troops, but your options of gameplay expand so much more with this expansion because you have the ability to do forests, bridges, hills, fortresses, like an actual fortress, the whole nine, with the troops, the archers lining the walls, and the enemy trying to batter through with a battering ram, the whole nine, all that type of stuff. Yeah, you can do that with that terrain expansion. All right, so anyway, let's jump back in. Let's pull our card for the enemy forces, and it is in order. And it's, I was hoping it would tell me something specific. You can activate 2 units. All right, basic enough. What 2 units do we want to get going? I don't think they have anything in range, so it might just be moving up. Okay, so I'm looking at these guys here, these silos, whatever the hell they're called. They are skirmishers. They got javelins. They have the ability to do an ranged attack. And what I'm thinking is if they move up 3, they might just be able to get that ranged attack off against the cavalry and attempt to get some damage through, get some wounds on them. And same with another set of the silos beneath. But if I move them forward and they don't cause some damage, then they're pretty much guaranteed to go down. I kind of wanted to move them up and then have infantry right there with them so they could be supported. Basically, the skirmishers move up, do their thing, and then fall back while the heavier infantry come up to like take the charge and get in. I don't want to risk these guys. These are actually the most expensive troops on the board right now. 200, well, actually, besides the elephants are 250. These guys, though, there's a couple of those. 220 points, really good stats across them, especially their morale's high. They can do a phalanx. They can do, they have spears. I think that's Sarasus. Basically, oh my God, these guys, the bonuses they get are tremendous. They get to attack first. So like a combat goes on, they get stuck in. They get to do their damage before the enemy does, right? And that has to do with their inherent spears, what do they call these things? Sarasus, something like that. But then if they're in the phalanx formation, that blue one, that also grants that bonus. It's a lot of cool stuff going through with these guys. They are just super shit hot powerful, especially if they can get in their types of formations, but they are slow. Movement factor of 2. God, I kind of want to get them stuck in now, but we have some others over here that are decent. These guys are decent. They can do a phalanx, and actually, they're just like the others, except weaker stats. Yeah, they have the same type of abilities these guys do. Not quite as many, but for the most part. And they're half the cost. Damn, if I had known that, I would have just got a bunch of them instead. I can only activate 2. I'm thinking, okay, we'll try to move them up, maybe. Yeah, I want to move up some infantry. So I'm going to have to move up the skirmishers, and we'll move up these to stay behind them. That's what we're going to do. Okay, so we'll move up our skirmishers. And if I rotate them even a little bit, it costs a movement. So we're not going to rotate. We're just going to go straight forward because they are slower than shit. They are heavy infantry. They're slow, but they are good. And yeah, we'll attempt. And yes, we're out of range. That's roughly their range. Their range is not far on those little things. But you got to remember, they're throwing javelins, right? They're not able to pitch those things, all the way across the battlefield. They're not artillery. To show you what else the Macedonians have up here, they do have some cavalry there way at the top, similar to my own cavalry, I think. Yeah, they're roughly the exact same points, so pretty similar stats. And then they have some, I think these guys are archers. Nope, these guys are slingers, some type of slingers. They have a ranged ability. It's pretty decent, and they have the skirmisher ability. I put them up on the hill because that would give them just a little bit extra range. So instead of having 4 or 3, they should have a range of 4, so they can reach out to touch right about over here. That might work. I kind of wanted them to, soften up the enemy, but I'm not moving in fast enough. All right, let me stop talking about it. And both sides of the Macedonian lines are like my own, very similar. The heavy infantry, the cavalry, the slingers up on the hill, the other skirmishers, and then the general is right there in the back, and he's also on one of those very, very heavy, super powerful 220 point infantries. The strongest rather infantry that are on the field. They even beat the Roman heavy infantry right now. These elephants actually have a ranged ability, and with them being able to move 4, I think I'm going to be just shy of those skirmishers right there on the next one. But even so, I can move them up and get them on there and soften them up with some ranged attacks. Actually, just to say it, this is reminding me, the measurement and everything is reminding me very much of X-Wing and the way the skirmishes, the fights worked out, the dog fights in that game. And the fact that you had to try to visualize in your mind the range rulers, right? And there's a whole bunch in that game. Trying to keep in your mind exactly how your ships were going to land, right? As you were flying around. And I saw some people who were just like ninjas with that. They were able to see in their mind's eye exactly where their ships would end up and just outfly anybody on the board. I was never that good at estimating, so I'm probably going to be way short on these things. All right, let's draw another card. And we have, you can activate half of your units rounding down. Wow. Okay. Yeah, this is that random factor that I was talking about that can be a huge swing. I'm almost feeling bad because I activated 3 on the first turn. They activated 2. That's not bad. But now I'm getting ready to activate like 5. Okay, so here's what we did. I went ahead and did all my moving. That way we save a little time. And then I marked which units I had moved so I could come back and point it out to you guys. So what we have here is I moved up the Velites, Vetites, whatever. Skirmishers over here. They're just behind the forest. That way they can move up, get in the forest on a following turn, start chucking some spears, going after these guys, do their skirmisher thing. Moved up 2 units of infantry over here, light infantry and heavy infantry. The light infantry is faster. These guys move at 3. These guys move at 2. So they can get up, soften them up. These guys can come in after them. Moved up the armed civilians onto the center because I want them to just get on the hill and hold it, right? That way, if the enemy tries to get up there, doesn't matter. These guys only cost 20 points. Their stats are nothing. Now over here's where things actually change up a little bit. We did move up the skirmishers over here, cover the right flank. They're moving up, trying to get behind the trees to do the same thing. Now, over here, I finished the charge off with the cavalry and got them with their little bonus, right? So put them in their formation, and then you see how it wasn't perfectly lined up. The way I hit it, I only hit the first 3, right? So 1, 2, 3 sections, which means I was allowed to envelop into their flank. That means I'm attacking from the front and the side, and I get a bonus in the combat for doing that. Now, before we run this combat, I am going to draw a card and look at the event. If the event is javelins, that means they can throw their javelins at me right before the charge hits and try to soften up my guys. Otherwise, they're not going to get that. And then we'll run the melee combat itself, where I'll be getting bonuses because they're infantry, and this is cavalry, and plus another bonus for them being in the arrowhead. Okay, so the first thing that we do in the melee combat phase is the event. So I draw a random card, and actually let me hold it up for the camera. Oh, look at the order on that card. It's full mobilization. You could activate all your units. Damn, that would be a super awesome card. All right, but we're not looking at that one. We are looking below here, right? This is the event. So you're always going to do this when you do a combat. Melee combat, range combat, it doesn't matter. You're going to draw a random card and apply the effects. All right, so if another one of your units makes contact with the enemy, you can add both attack values. Not doing that. The defender is set. Okay. This is not going to apply. Now, when you draw it as a random event like this, You look down here to the bottom right to see who it applies to. Sword means the attacker, shield means the defender. In this case, this would mean me, right? The Roman guys. But it's not going to apply for us because don't have any second units. None of my guys are even close right now to this combat. So we can pretty much ignore this event. Okay, so when it comes to the melee combat itself, both attacker and defender are going to roll the exact same number of dice in every combat. So both the attacker and defender are going to roll the same number of dice in each combat for melee, right? Doesn't matter stats or anything like that. It's how many frontal hits are across here. I have 4. Basically, we're in contact in 4 places. 1, 2, 3, and 4 with the flank. Now, it's giving me a bonus, and it's giving them a penalty, but it still counts. So it's 4 dice is what we're looking at here. So just to help us keep track, we'll set 4 out for the Romans, and we'll grab 4 out for the Macedonians. That's what they're going to be rolling. Now, I'm going to pick up a different card to show you guys so I don't upset this combat that's going on over here. Remember when I was talking about the hit and the damage, right? So these first numbers here, they can be modified, right? I'm getting modifiers for the charge, for attacking infantry with cavalry. Those are my +1s to my combat. But what you're going to do is that first number is the number that you're going to add when you're trying to hit. And then the second number is what you're going to add when you're trying to damage. The way you're going to determine this is here, right? The defensive stats. The first number here is going to need to be beat by this first number in melee. Second number and second number. That's the way to think about it. Basically, this is their dodge is the first number on defense, and then their armor is the second number. So to hit them, you're trying to get a higher score than their dodge. To hurt them, you're trying to get a higher number than their defense. It's the easiest way to explain this. Ultimately, the way the combat's going to work out is the side that causes the most wounds is victorious in the combat, and the other side has to take a morale check to see if they break or not. Also, when you're doing this attack, the ones that you're rolling to damage, right, is only going to be the ones that actually hit in combat. Pretty self-explanatory, but, make sure to add that part anyway. All right, so the way to look at it here is the stats for my cavalry, their melee is 4-4, all right? I am getting a +1 for the lunge ability, right? It's basically attacking infantry, and +1 for the charge. That means I'm basically a 6-6, right? To think about it. Their defense is 6-4. Basically, they're pretty well screwed. They're going to take a lot of hits on this one because they're getting a -1 from being flanked, right? So that's why you don't want to allow yourself to be attacked from the flank if you can at all help it, because it will reduce your melee defense. Now I'm going to lose this charge bonus on the next attack. It's going to come off, so I'm not going to keep that +1 bonus, but that shows you how brutal the charge can be. So am I rolling to hit? I'm pretty well almost, I think I'm guaranteed. Yeah, because I have +6 on my to hit, or I have 6, that I'm adding to whatever I roll on the dice, and their dodge is a 5. Their dodge is 5 because they're getting a -1. So they're pretty well guaranteed to take 4 damage on this. All right, so let's roll for our hits real quick. What are we doing? Yeah, that's all hits because it can't be anything but. On it. Yeah, they're getting hurt pretty bad on this one. What was it? And 6 against their armor. Yeah, their armor it's messed up because of the flank hit. Yeah, so their attack is so high it's guaranteed to go through, and they got them. So 4 wounds. Very easy to figure that one out. And this is still considered to happen simultaneously, unless there's something else that's going to change that, which, like I said, there are certain cases where combat is not going to be simultaneous. And that's going to be things that a unit has that Sarasu spear ability, or spears, or phalanx formation, stuff like that will change the order of combat. Now, it's going to be a little different with them attacking back, because their melee stats are shit. Actually, so they don't have anything that's going to affect their stats. Their melee stats are 2/2. You're going to add that 2 to whatever you roll on the dice roll and compare it to the dodge. Now, the dodge for the cavalry is really good. It's 7. Their armor is only a 4, though. So, let's see what we get. All right, so let's see what we get. And they actually snuck one through. They snuck one through. They did get one hit. All right, so again, we're going to add 2 to whatever they roll, and now it's compared to their armor factor. Their armor factor is only a 4, so a little easier for them to beat. I think they only need a 1 on this one. And roll for it, and yep, they got it. So they were able to sneak a wound through, but this means that the cavalry did win this combat pretty handily. Now the bad guys here have to take, or not the bad guys, the Macedonians here have to take a morale check to see if they break from losing that melee combat. Okay, so after the combat, you do the morale check. And this is something that I've gone over in the rule book, and I think they made a huge gaffe in the way that they did this, because morale checks are not really explained in the rule book. They're only really explained in the examples of combat. And that is a huge gaffe on their part. What I think is they probably thought they had explained it, and they did not. Now, this unit has a morale of 7, okay? They have 4 wounds, and they are being flanked. -1 for the flank and -1 for each wound. That means a -5 total. That brings their morale down to a 2, essentially. What you're going to do is roll a die, and you're looking to roll under whatever that number, that modified number is. That's your morale check. The book never really specifies this. It talks about it tangentially, and if you read all the examples of play, you can figure out how to do a morale check. But and this is the thing that drives me nuts. And I'll show you this, because I'm sorry, I love the game. I think the game's great, but I'm gonna call out a mistake when a mistake's made. Right here, morale check. I have gone through every single one of those pages in their index, because they were good enough to put an index in here. And at not one point on any of those pages is that explained really as a morale check. All the spots that say morale check just say you'll roll a die and perform a morale check. The only way to figure out how said morale check is performed is to actually read the examples of combat that are on some of these pages and put it together. I'm sorry, that's a huge goof. You should have in there, a morale check is performed, and as such, you will blah, 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 and do jack and shit and end up with your number. Because honestly, I am not 100% sure if it's equal to or under whatever the modified number is. I'm going to keep track on BGG and see if I pop up with an answer to that question, but I know I can't be the only one who's a little irritated by this. Anyway, that is how a morale check works. So let's roll for them. And they fail their morale check. So we will grab a little broken marker here and throw it on the unit, which is going to apply some modifiers. Now, the next time they can potentially rally and get rid of that broken thing and all that good stuff. But if they fail another morale check while broken, then they start going into flight and they'll start running off the board onto their side. And if they escape the map, they are casualties. They're taken out. All right, so that one turn ended up being a lot longer than I anticipated, but I like it. And I gotta say, after playing with it this way, I think this works. At least it works for me as far as drawing the cards. And that's how I'm going to, work combat. If there's a better way that works for you, if you like the way that they have it in their specific rule book for solitaire play, stick with that. Play it however it works for you. When you're playing solitaire, the only one's fun that matters is yours. So it doesn't really matter if anyone else likes how you play at solitaire, as long as you're having fun with it. Hell, if you want to shuffle up the cards and play poker with them, go for it. It's your game. Have a good time. All right, but we'll pick up on the next turn. It's going to be the Macedonians, and we're going to have to see what they're going to do. I got a feeling they're going to have to bring in their heavy infantry, because their skirmishers have been engaged there. That skirmisher was crushed by the cavalry, but that's the purpose of cavalry. Cavalry is supposed to take out those skirmishers, the ones that can weaken the troops from range, and move around freely on the board. But they have some seriously heavy infantry here. Even their 90-point infantry that's a little bit lighter is going to just decimate some of this Roman infantry, especially as light infantry up here. They're going to get crushed. They have none of those abilities that these guys do. And they have a few of them, but it's only going to take a few of them. I think one of those guys can take on 2 of these easily. When it comes to the armed infantry are nothing. Those guys are 20 points. And they have a stat of 1. I mean, any modifier, they're easily crushed. I only threw them in just to have them in. I had 20 points left over. I figure at best they can just be cannon fodder and run up and just take the shots so the other troops don't get shot at. All right, but we're going to go ahead and cut here. If you guys have any questions, feel free, as always, to put them down below. Let me know what you guys think, and you all stay tuned. I will have the next video up as soon as possible. Y'all take care. I'll catch you in the next one.